Independent's final show, maybe for the year, but look, hey, thank you for joining us tonight, and thanks for the crowd to come along tonight, Wednesday night. I was going to say any time, but gosh, it's kind of the whole season's gone by so fast. Nicholas Delegate, we all heard about this. 19, sentenced to 300 hours community service, ordered to pay $5,000 in emotional harm reparation for assaulting Constable Lana Kane during a drunken incident. Now, she was punched several times as she lost consciousness. Bit of a big issue. When you heard about this, Sarah, what did you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, look, the actions are appalling, but as an ex-lawyer, when it comes to sentencing, I know that our judges work really, really hard to apply the law even-handedly.
You're a lawyer, aren't you?
Yeah, I was a lawyer, that's right. So with regards to sentencing, there'll be mitigating factors, but certainly it shouldn't be on anything like colour.
You've got your mouth open and surprised there, Trevor.
I mean, what's the mitigating factor? That he's rich?
Well, I said not
that
colour.
I'm
not commenting on that.
That's just not good
I'm
enough.
not commenting on that case.
Well, I'm going to comment on the case,
Well,
and I'm going to start with another case, and it's my case.
Appealable.
People will remember about a decade ago I was charged with assault. You know, I toe-to-toe with toe.
Yes.
And I was charged with assault. I hired a QC.
What happened again? You hit him?
Yeah, he grabbed my tie, he pulled me around, and I did the silly middle-aged male thing, and I dropped him. You know? And I got charged with assault, but in the end, I got my QC. I paid over $500 an hour. I got the charge downgraded to fighting, and I copped that because we were fighting. It wasn't an assault at all. But I could do it because I had the money. Now this guy had a QC flying up and down from Auckland, so he had him for days. He had him for days, probably 100K. And most people don't have that. Part of it might be ethnic, but I think a lot of it in this case is the wealthy parents could afford the flash lawyer.
Is justice colourblind?
Well, it's more. It's more than a question of colour.
Right. A mitigating factor is not race.
It's partly colour, but it's actually wealth.
All right, Marama, what do you think of it? What do you think about this case?
Look, Dominion today said that if you are Maori in this country, you'll be twice as likely just to be stopped. You're also 3 times as likely to be charged for the same crime as non-Māori. You're 3 times more likely to be incarcerated for the same crime as non-Māori. You're 3 times as likely to be sentenced for a longer period as non-Māori for the same crime. People say that there is unconscious bias in the justice system. Well, that means to me that I was asleep when I was being racist, because if this boy was Māori, he would be in jail. Guarantee it.
Here's the deal, right? He's 19 years old. He was remorseful. He wrote an apology, and if he gets that conviction, he won't be able to get to his varsity in the US. Put him in jail.
Wait on, Wallace. Do you remember the story about the boy who was the head boy?
Hotahi Kingi.
Yes, at Whanganui Collegiate. Has a fight where he punches some guy, and his life is over, and it follows him for the rest of his life. He's had to fight every tooth and nail. He was discriminated against from that moment on. And I can give you a million different incidents where that is the case. And it's not colourblind. Not at all.
And yet there are a million different cases where the law has been applied in a consistent manner. And I think that in our Constitution, there is a separation of powers. In our Constitution, there is a separation of powers for a reason. The judiciary is separate from the Parliament to prevent any political influence and to stop corruption.
No. Hang on, let's get that right. Yeah. Parliament has always been able to comment on the judiciary.
Thank you.
It's always been able to comment on sentencing. That's part of our role and our responsibility.
Let's bring James to this. This case here, 19-year-old Nicholas Delegate, 300 hours, okay. The constable was punched several times. She lost consciousness. 15 hours in Dunedin Hospital. What did you make of it?
Look, I have to agree with these guys. I think if this guy had been poor and brown, the chances are he would be in jail, right? And so you ask the question, is justice blind? It should be, but I think the stats say in this country it is not.
That's right.
It's just, you should call it unconscious bias. Trevor's right about that wealth and privilege have a lot to do with it, but wealth and privilege and colour go hand in hand in this country.
And Wallace, you know the unconscious bias thing, really quickly, they call it that because that's palatable. What it is institutionalised racism. But nobody wants to talk about that. unconscious bias
Okay.
sounds okay.
Actually, I've got to say the police have actually acknowledged it, which
Yes,
is a
they
really
have.
good thing, and they're working pretty hard on
Let's
it.
jump on over to Hayley, who's got a guest.
Yes, I'm with Julia Whai-Porti, the chair of Just Speak. In your experience, do you think there is institutional racism in New Zealand?
Absolutely. If we look at the statistics and the plethora of research that's readily available, we know that institutional racism exists in this country, and I'm not sure why it's a topic of conversation. In order to address it, we need to label it. So the people across the road, if you could say that that's what's going on, then we can come up with a plan to address it.
What about what Trevor says? It's about money rather than colour.
You can't separate those two. They're inextricably linked. We're standing on stolen ground. When you have a displaced people, that's linked to the socio-economic outcomes for those people, and that's why Māori are overrepresented in the low socio-economic income. So it is inextricably linked, racism and wealth. Also, just one further point, there are many stories of wealthy, made-it Māori in this country who experience institutional racism when they're pulled over in their flash cars, when they're stopped in the middle of the shop to ask what they're buying. I've experienced that myself. It's just the fact of what exists in this country, so let's own it.
Is there anything we can actually do now then to combat this?
There's a number of things. The first thing would be to say that it exists, because then we can address the problem with solutions. The second thing, immediately, we could raise our youth jurisdiction to include 17-year-olds. We know that prisons are the university for crime, and the earlier you enter the criminal justice system, the more likely you are to graduate through that justice system. And as 17-year-olds, we know our young people everywhere else in our legislation. We've had a SIFS reform where 17-year-olds are going to be in safe care, but we continue to put 17-year-olds through our adult justice system. We could change that immediately. It's an easy legislative change, and that's one of the starting points. And if we can't change the easy fixes, then how are we going to change the overall outcomes?
What about... I like that one. What about... Could we look at this as a celebration because we've just set a precedent for everybody else who comes after?
A precedent for wealthy Pākehā boys. We could set a precedent. I don't actually want this boy to go into prison because, as I've said, it is, and as the research says, and as we know, prison is a university for further crime. It doesn't produce better outcomes, and it doesn't produce safer outcomes. So if we're looking at the safety of us as communities and as people, that's not the actual issue. I actually don't think the answer is that all Pākehā boys need to go to prison. The issue is, why are we sending people who can't afford lawyers who are Māori, why are we sending them to prison? Because they don't have enough money to buy a voice in the system. That's a problem.
All right, thank you, Julia. What do the MPs think of that, Laura?
Hey, Julia Whai-Porti, good to have you on the show, huh? Come again.
Yes, please.
Hey,
Sit on this side.
Well, what do you... Hey, what about that unconscious bias or institutional racism? Are we all biased at some level, Sarah?
Oh, look, I don't believe that people
are
are
you biased?
I'm
Am
not.
I biased?
Well, I wouldn't hope not. But listen, I'm not suggesting that there aren't incidents out there where there has been a bias. But what I'm saying is that I have faith that our judiciary will apply the law consistently. And as James has said, that the police have acknowledged it and they're starting to work on it. I think there was a really important point raised. The drivers of crime need to be looked at.
All right. Final comment, Marama, because you're shaking your head in the most egregious manner there. Just a final comment, and then we're going to move on.
The police commissioner has admitted there is unconscious bias in this system. He is working right now with the Secretary of Justice and iwi to try and address that. If it were me, Wallace, I would make Te Reo Māori compulsory tomorrow, because if you grow a nation of people who just understand tikanga, history, and the land issues in this country, then we would grow a nation of people who no longer apply their unconscious bias.
Okay. We've talked about it on this show before, unconscious bias. Look, stay with us. We are back soon.